All right, we got Miranda Maverick on the program. She made her UFC debut on Saturday at UFC 254. Got a first-round TKO win over Liana Jojua after the fight was stopped before the second round began. Great win for Miranda. Fear the Maverick. Great to have you here, Miranda. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So the debut is in the books. You got to do it on Fight Island during a very unique time in our world. What did you make of the experience in Abu Dhabi, and how does the win feel a few days later?
The win feels great. I've been traveling up until late last night, so it was a long drive and plane flight back home, but I'm here kind of getting to soak everything in. Still haven't quite gotten my check yet, but I'm sure the reality will hit at that point. It was exciting to make my debut and have it happen the way that it did. I kind of wish I would have got to keep fighting to show more of my skills, but a win's a win.
There you go. As you stated in your post-fight scrum, you have a million things going on. You're going for your PhD. I talked to John Anik on the show last week. He said that you sort of blew him away during the fighter meetings because you're doing some teaching, you're doing some assistant work, you've been teaching Zoom classes, like you're getting ready for a fight at the same time. So what was sort of like the day-to-day like for you on the island? Did you get to focus on the fight like per se, or did you still have to work on those very other important things in your life as the fight week was progressing?
I still had to work on everything else while my fight was getting ready. Even the day of weight cutting, Thursday night, I literally had a 3.5-hour Zoom meeting from 9:30 p.m. to midnight. And so it was, constant even when I was miserable and cutting weight. But that's part of it. I signed up for it. It's my decision in life to have went after all those things. So it's not something I can be whining about.
Was it almost like a good thing at the same time? Because, you didn't have to focus and kind of overwhelm yourself with the fight. You could sort of distract yourself with some of those other things.
Not really. I wish I could just focus on just the fight. It's pretty miserable to have everything else to keep track of too. It just raises the stress level even more. Makes it to where, I don't want to be too tired for the fight to where I have no brain power left in the day to work on homework or teaching or whatever else. And it just provided a lot of things for me to keep up with, in addition to the whole UFC schedule that was going on out there. And the time change was rough with everything because I was having classes into the, early morning hours. So it made it pretty rough, but I tried to get everything ahead of time a little bit to where at least like the day of the fight, I didn't have anything to do, and the day of weigh-ins, I didn't really have anything to do, so that was nice.
I know you were supposed to debut in June, but you were scratched from that fight. You were supposed to fight Mara Romero Barella, and I'm sure that sucked for you, but at the same time, you get to debut on one of the biggest cards of the year. You're one of the standouts of the event. So I would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like things worked out pretty well for you, did they not?
Yeah, definitely. And I believe things happen for a reason, and I couldn't have asked for much of a better debut, whether how it went or the event that I got to be on. So I'm not whining. I'm glad that things got fixed that were wrong in June, and I got to go in there and show my stuff.
The main event was obviously a big talking point, but nobody really knew that we were watching Khabib Nurmagomedov fight for the last time in his illustrious career. He ends his career 29-0, undefeated, undisputed champion. What is that like, in the aftermath, being able to share your card, share a card with your first fight with his last fight?
Memorable. That's the word for it. It's exciting. Everybody's going to remember that card, rewatch that card several times. Helped me with my exposure, and it's an honor to be on a card with so many great fighters. Like, it was just a phenomenal card from beginning to end, in my opinion, and I was lucky that I got to watch some of the fights. Unfortunately not live, but we got to go back to our hotel room, and the hotel had it to where we could watch them.
Well, there you go. So what did you think of Khabib's performance, and then kind of finding out everything that happened in the aftermath, the injuries? He had mumps heading into the fight, like all that in play to beat a guy that many believed was his toughest test. What did you think of that?
He's one of the greatest. Everybody kind of already knew it. I didn't really think he was going to win quite so dominantly, but it just speaks to how good he really is. It was amazing.
So let's talk about your fight. Jojua comes out. She landed some shots early. One thing that I noticed, and I know the broadcaster as well, she was moving around really well. She definitely made some improvements in that aspect, but you stayed very patient. And as the fight progressed, your confidence just continued to soar. When you got into the octagon, you make the walk and all that. Was it a little nerve wracking for you, or did you need like a couple of punches before you got comfortable, or you were just right in the moment, right from the jump?
I would say it took me a minute to get used to. You can kind of see me adjust throughout the fight, and it took probably 30 to 45 seconds for me to be like, okay, this is where I'm at. Get your head together and go. And then from then on, I think I showed a pretty dominant display. But the first few strikes that she landed and stuff were kind of like a wake-up call, getting in there, getting any nerves that were there out. I tried to go in there without any nerves at all, without anxiety, like put my faith where it needs to be and know that I don't need to be anxious. Whatever is going to be in there is going to happen. But it still gets to you no matter how experienced you are, like changing levels and going to the UFC from Invicta and everything. It was just a new experience. It's exciting hearing Bruce Buffer call out my name for the first time and hearing, like, literally you can hear everything the commentators are saying cage side, which I think could be really negative for some fighters. Like, I don't care. I block it out and pay attention to only my coaches. But had I wanted to, I could have literally heard every word that was being said. I could hear it as I was walking into the cage. So just getting those nerves out and everything, I think took me a few seconds. And then once that was gone, I was ready to go. I felt my own rhythm and started doing my game plan.
Do you remember the last time you felt that way, like getting into a cage? Was it your first Invicta fight, or did it happen like earlier, or is this a typical thing for you?
I don't usually really have any nervousness. And even this time, the nerves weren't super bad or anything. I was very focused. Like, that's where I belong. You know what I mean? It's where I've envisioned myself being. But I felt that way my first Invicta fight. I actually felt that way my second Invicta fight. And then probably at the tournament, like just different new things that happen. And it kind of depends on opponent, depends on promotion, just a lot of different things. And even how I feel going into the fights. Just every once in a while, you get those nerves that happen. My second pro fight was probably one of the worst, just because the girl I was going against had all this hype behind her and I knew I was supposed to just go in there and get my butt kicked. And luckily I didn't, won in the first round, but that was probably the last time I felt that nervous.
So you're landing at will, you turn the corner, you got very comfortable, you started to overwhelm her a little bit, and then the step-in elbow, which I've watched probably 50 times by now, that was the beginning of the end. You don't see those elbows find success that often at this level, but you did it in your first UFC fight, and that thing was ferocious, and it was nasty. How many times have you gone back and watched it?
Several times, and it's really exciting. My coach keeps trying to go back in training videos and finding where we've trained it, because it was a very specific thing that we practiced leading up to the fight. And it was funny because I was like, I'm going to fake level changes and then boom, walk in, because she puts her head down a lot when she throws punches. Anytime she landed was her with her head down. She doesn't have very good striking at all. And people assume that I don't, but I have a lot better than I'd ever shown previously. I just didn't need to. I would take it down and finish it. And I decided to just show off a little bit this time, I guess, and tried that elbow 2 times previous to actually landing it clean. And every time it was connecting with her face. I just wasn't getting the slice that I wanted, and finally was able to aim and get it right on the button, and it worked perfect.
As you said, you weren't overly thrilled with how the fight ended because you had a lot of bullets left in the chamber, but all things considered, you fly across the world, you get a finish in your UFC debut, you get a highlight of the night that people keep watching. So all in all, it's a pretty good night for you. How would you grade your performance overall?
They graded my performance as a B. I would have given myself an A-. I could have done better the first 30 seconds. But aside from that, I did my game plan perfectly. Had I got to keep going, I would have shown even more, hopefully some cage work and groundwork and everything else. But I went in there and did my job. So I couldn't have asked for a better debut.
A first round finish and they gave you a B? What?
Yeah, they were like, well, I think it was Philip Haas's fault. They gave him an A+. How can you do better than that? You go in there, punch somebody once, knock them out. I'm like, well, okay.
All right, I'll take it. A B's still good, but you're a student. I know, like, my wife was a student. She's like, if I can get an A, I'm going to get an A.
It was the joke all over the internet with friends of mine, because I was always the straight A student, and they were like, what? This is the first B Miranda's ever gotten in her life.
So now you're back home. The travel is behind you. What is life like now? Are you trying to catch up on sleep, or is that not even possible with everything you have going on?
It's not even possible, honestly. Like, with the flight, and I was able to kind of go to sleep on the sleep schedule here last night because I was just so tired. But I have class literally right after we get off of this Zoom call. So it's kind of right. I don't get a break. It's right back to schoolwork. I'll go to training tonight, work as hard as I ever have. Like, I'm not much for taking breaks. I don't believe in off season within this sport. I'm ready to go at all times. And I've got to act that way. Being a professional fighter isn't a part-time job. You know, it's one of those things where you go in there and put your life on the line. People who just train sometimes, or when they have a fight coming up, they take it seriously, are never going to get to the top.
So do your, like, because I know you do some teaching assisting as well. Do like your professors, do your fellow classmates, do they all know that you're fighting in the UFC?
I think most do. And luckily, like, my school did like the story on me earlier this, I guess it was this summer over the COVID time. They did like a story about me. So a lot of the students and stuff know about me. I actually got like 5 emails from school from different professors that I don't even know and things that were just like, congratulations, glad you make it back safe. And then a lot of my students know, like last year, they actually did like a student party when I fought some of my students. This time it's online, so it's a little bit more detached than what in-person classes provide for me to have a relationship with my students. But I think a lot of them are still pretty aware, and it's really exciting.
That's pretty cool. So you mentioned during your scrum that you're doing all of these things to set you up for life outside of fighting when that time comes. And you're obviously very young in life and in the sport. Have you kind of like laid out a professional career plan for yourself? Like, you're going to fight until this time, then you're going to move on to this, do that. Like, have you planned that all out? Or are you sort of taking things a fight at a time, a day at a time? Like, how does that work for you?
So kind of freakishly planned out in my life, like everything, whether it be current or future. I'm very good at like planning out what I want with my life, what I want with my career. And it's funny, like, people took offense to me saying, like, unlike a lot of fighters, I have a backdrop. And I wasn't meaning that to be insulting necessarily, but I want an education. I want to have other career paths. If my knee gets messed up in a fight, I don't have to struggle along for the rest of my life trying to make a living in something else. I want to have a good future financially. But back onto your topic, I want to be done fighting in my early 30s. I don't want to be like, I'm top 50, yay, when I'm 35 years old, like a few people I know do, you know, and they're really excited to even be recognized at that age. And for me, like, I'm 23. I want to be in the top 10 by the time I'm 24, at least. Like, I'm ready to get to the top, make my mark, make my money, and move on with my life. I don't want to get brain damage. I don't want to have just that thing going for me when I'm ready to have a family and have kids and things, and then have to go right back to fighting to make a living. So I want to be done by the time I'm in my early 30s and move on to other things. Hopefully it's in association with the sport too, whether it be commentating or consulting for sports organizations or things like that, in tie with my education. That would be the dream, you know?
So you still have like 7, 8, 9, maybe a decade left.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not like done in the next few years or anything. I want to make it like a pretty long career goal. Like, after I'm done getting my PhD, I'm hopefully not going to jump right into a job and be doing my MMA. I want to focus on MMA for a few years, make it to that, you know, the top of the food chain, and then we'll see what happens from there.
You certainly have lofty aspirations, Miranda. You said that, you know, you're in no real rush at the moment, but you already have goals. You have your sights set on Valentina. You have your sights set on becoming a champion, you know, and Valentina's looked unbeatable as of late, but you see yourself at some point being the one to pull it off and get a win over her. Why do you feel like you could be the one to do what very few have done before?
You know, I don't think it's going to be the next fight, but hopefully in a few fights in the next couple of years. It's funny, people were like picking on me. They're like, oh, another person calling out Valentina. I'm like, I didn't really call her out. I'm saying that's where I want to be at some point. But I think that I have this grappling background that is stronger than almost every other girl in the division, where I can go in there and wrestle them and use my jiu-jitsu and get finishes. They didn't talk about that a lot in this fight, which I found amusing, just because Jojua had this grappling background and they were talking about how many finishes she had by armbar. And I was like, nobody's talking about the 5 finishes I have with armbar and rear naked choke and everything else, you know. But that aside, I feel like nobody's pushed Valentina in her grappling at all. Like, people always wait until they're dead tired to try to take her down. They're like, oh, it's round 2. Maybe I should try to take her to the ground because I just got beat up for a whole round. Like, why not take her down in the first round, or at least test her skills there? Like, nobody even seems to want to go to the ground with her. It's like this whole competition of, well, she's a good striker, so I want to show I am too. That's not the fighting world. Like, you need to go in there and win a fight. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not trying to do stand up because I'm trying to be like, well, I'm better than you, so I'm going to do my stand up. Like, I just go in there and show my potential and do what I need to do to win fights.
So you have right now, there's like a happy balance between mystery versus history, which is good. I mean, eventually that aura is going to wear off, but you might have like another fight where people kind of overlook your grappling.
Yeah, it could be, and that always happens. This was one of the only fights I wasn't an underdog in, and it still depended on who you talk to, I think in the betting odds, I was the favorite, but I was the underdog as far as talent and stuff a lot of times when people would talk about it. And yeah, it's interesting to me. Like, a lot of times when I fight anybody with submission of any sort or grappling game, they just kind of dismiss my own, which is interesting, but I guess at one point, it'll change the other way.
Yeah, enjoy it while you can.
Yeah.
Right. But what's interesting now is there's a lot of interest in this division for the first time in a while. We got Lauren Murphy, who just got a win and a finish on the main card. Jessica Andrade just beat the number 1 contender. Cynthia Calvillo had a win over the previous number 1 contender. And they're all sort of vying for this next shot against the winner of Shevchenko and Jennifer Maia. So 125, the women's division, is getting a lot of buzz right now. So I think your timing to enter this fray here, it's kind of perfect, isn't it?
I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect for getting me something in the near future. I'm hoping I have a fight around early December coming up. I asked for one within the next month. I just got done being asked by my management when I could fight, and worked out my schedule to look at where school aligned with free time for fighting, and hopefully we get it lined up in the next few weeks.
Anybody stick out to you now that you've had some time to process the trip and the fight and the whole adventure to Fight Island?
I've been talking to my dad and some other people, my coaches, and thinking about like who to call out per se, but it's not exactly my style to do that usually. I just want to climb my way up the ladder. Whoever they put in front of me next, I want it to be obviously a higher ranked opponent and go in there and show my stuff again. I'd love it if they put me against a striker. That would be almost amusing. But I'm ready for anybody. I'm ready for anybody to throw at me. I'm ready to move up to the top and show once again what I can do.
Yeah, we do a matchmaking show for MMA fighting. It's called On to the Next One. And I think we mentioned this on the post-fight show too. I think you versus like Justine Kish makes all the sense in the world because she's a striker and she's a veteran in the UFC. She's had a lot of fights. She just lost to Sabina Mazo. But still, I think considering the next step for your career to get to where you want to be, I think Justine's a pretty good step for you and a good test for you.
Yeah, that would be nice. There's a lot that people have kind of put out there as people for me to fight against. And I think all of them have been pretty interesting ideas. It's funny to me, though, like once somebody wins via striking, everybody wants that person to go against a striker. And for me, like that would be so nice because strikers, for me, I just take down and finish them every fight. And it's funny to me. I'm like, why would I do that? Why would I stand up and strike with them? And they're like, well, to prove a point that your striking is good. And when people do that, it's just silly to me. I'm like, I'm in there to make money and win fights and move on up the chain. I'm going to do whatever is advantageous for me, not what shows off against what people think about me,
Where does this, you're 23 years of age. You're very confident. You're very well spoken. Where does this confidence come from?
I 100% believe that I grew up different than any other female out there, like made for this sport almost. That's what it seems like. I grew up picking up hay bales. I grew up picking up rocks in the field as punishment. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't grounded. I didn't live in the city where all I had to do was play video games and stuff. I grew up working like a grown man on a farm from the age of like 5 years old on, doing work that most people would be like, holy crap, I'm not doing that, and I'm so appreciative of it. I'm so appreciative that I grew up that way and made this like actual core strength. Like people brag about my strength and stuff. It's not just genetics. It's not just me working out now or working hard in the gym. It came from how I grew up. It came from everything that I was put through as a child, lifting things. Like my dad wouldn't let us give up when we wanted to. It was push that extra 10 seconds and do what you could do. And that's what separates normal people and champions in the gym and everything else. And the fact that I just grew up that way gives me that edge on other opponents. That and creating this mindset where I've gone to school and done this all at the same time and had other things on my plate through life. And I don't think other people do that either. They focus on one thing, or they have very living in the present dreams instead of fighting for something. Like a lot of people fight to be champion. For me, being a champion is just a means to the end. Like that isn't my end goal. My end goal is to live a life outside of that with a family, to have property, to have investment, to have a happy family and everything. Not to be champion. To be champion is to make those other dreams come true, you know? So means to ends versus just having an end. Like my goals are never the end for me. And I think that's where the mentality separates itself too.
I cannot believe I'm 14 years older than you. Listening to you talk like this is unbelievable. Last thing I want to ask you about, because I know you got things going on. You said you career aspirations outside of the sport, maybe involved in the sport, maybe as an analyst. So let me ask you this: your last Invicta opponent, Pearl Gonzalez, is going to fight Erin Blanchfield for the vacant flyweight title on November 20th. And I know you haven't fought Erin before, but you have to assume that if she beats Pearl, her UFC call is coming pretty quick. So how do you see that fight playing out?
So my opinion on it varies two different ways. To make me look good, I hope Erin loses. You know what I mean? I hope that Pearl keeps on winning and it makes me look even better. However, I think Erin will win. I want Erin to win. I think that she's a good person. I think she's a good fighter, and she's another young person coming up in a division that needs more people again. And you say I haven't fought her. I actually had a fight lined up against her for the Contender Series, and that got called off due to some Invicta. The people in charge of Invicta didn't really want their two top girls going against each other outside of the organization. It kind of makes a promotion look bad when they're going into the Contender Series versus just getting into the UFC, which luckily I got the call up for. But I think Erin Blanchfield's grappling will prove to be stronger than Pearl's. And I also think that her striking is really coming along too. So I think she's going to win. There's a little bit of saltiness from my end that I beat somebody and they're getting to jump right into a title shot. But it is what it is, you know. Vanessa got moved up. I got moved up. Deanna Bennett got moved up. A lot of the girls from Invicta are moving on to bigger, better things, and I'm proud of them. But my guess is Erin Blanchfield.
Were you and Erin supposed to fight like this season or last season?
Oh, I guess it was last season in June, around June.
Oh, okay. That would have got a lot of buzz. But I guess I understand where they're coming from. But
I was happy to get my other call ups. It was kind of my last option. I really didn't want to do the Contender Series at all. I thought I was beyond that, and I am beyond that. So I was kind of irritated that was the call up I was getting. So it ended up working out differently, and I'm excited for what happened.